W.T Grant, or Grants, was a United States-based chain of mass merchandise stores that operated from 1906 until 1976. Welcome to Eric C. Productions. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you get notified of my latest video that are posted during the week. Be sure to hit that like button and leave a suggestion or a comment. You might see that video in a future posting. This video was suggested by Lisa Lee, whose Grams worked at this store. Thank you for your suggestion, and now back to the program.
Great news from Grants, downtown Maine at Huron. Grants has a special selection of soul LPs in stereo, selling for $1.67. Great artists too, like The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Chuck Berry, The Supremes, and more. You get Wilson Pickett, The Fifth Dimension, Junior Walker. All these LPs and more selling for $1.67 in stereo. You gotta pick and choose to Grant downtown Maine at Huron.
William Thomas Grant started the business when he opened his first store in 1906 in Lynn, Massachusetts. His policies of small profits and honest values immediately proved popular, and more stores quickly followed. W.T Grant Company's 25-cent stores produced a modest profit coupled with a fast turnover of inventory and usually located in downtowns. This formula was a recipe for success. Grant started as a 25-cent variety store, a step above the 5 and dimes of the time, and grew into a full-service retailer. The stores had an in-house restaurant and lunch counters known as Bradford Houses. Grants even had a mascot named Bucky. No, not that Bucky. Grants had a pilgrim mascot named Bucky Bradford. Grants grew to almost $100 million in annual sales by 1936, the same year that William Thomas Grant started the W.T Grant Foundation. By the 1940s, stores were enlarged and streamlined to include a second-floor showroom for home furnishings. Grants had nearly 500 stores in 39 states during the World War II years. Grants by then had departments devoted to a wide range of items like women's clothing, toys, books, furniture, hardware, records, and lawn and garden. The chain didn't compete with more upscale local retailers like Sibley's and McCurdy's. Grant's merchandise was reasonably priced, its rivalry more with stores like Chris Edge's. Like many national chain stores and some larger department stores, Grant's arranged for a low-price exclusive record label called Diva. Columbia Records produced this label, which consisted of many titles issued on Columbia's General Sale Harmony label, and it existed from 1925 through 1930. Based on the number of copies sold, it appeared to be a good-selling label. Grant continued to sell records after 1930, but they no longer had their own label. Although Grants had in-store restaurants called the Bradford House, they also had an alternative restaurant format. The Skillet was used for their in-store lunch counters. Canadian retailer Zellers concluded a deal with the W.T Grant Company. The Grant Company was allowed to purchase 10% of Zellers' common shares and was given options that eventually translated into a 51% effective ownership of Zellers in 1959. In return for this, the Grant Company was making available to Zellers its experience on matters of merchandise, real estate, store development, and general administration. Zellers employees were sent to Grant stores and head of office for training, and together they made common buying trips to Asia, a practice that benefited both companies. Grant's stores were slower than the Cressage stores to adapt to the growth of the suburban and the change in shopping habits that this entailed. The attempt to correct this was belated in the 1960s and early 1970s. The company built many larger stores, later known as Grant City, But unlike Crescegia's Kmart, they lacked uniform size and layout, so that a shopper familiar with one did not immediately feel at home in another. Grant's delay in building out its network of larger stores afforded rivals an opportunity to secure the most desirable building sites, leaving Grant's with less preferable locations, often with inadequate selling space. After the company began to lose money, funds were borrowed to pay the quarterly dividend until this became impossible. A final tactic to stay in business involved requiring Grant's clerks and cashiers to offer a Grant's credit card application to customers to boost sales in the store. W.T Grants' bankruptcy in 1976, which was then the second largest in U.S. history, was in part due to a failure to accept to the changing times, but was probably accelerated by management's refusal until it was too late to eliminate the shareholder dividend. While there is some argument over exactly which combination of decisions caused this, all of these decisions were made by an unchecked management layer, and the bankruptcy is considered the beginning of the end of the idea that U.S. company directors had complete control over their company and no obligation to the company's shareholders to make the best decisions to maintain the company's value and survival. The apparent cause of the bankruptcy was the company's decision to extend store credit to all customers, with no attempt made to assess the customer's ability to repay. Does this sound familiar? History repeats itself from Washington Mutual, who faced a similar dilemma nearly 40 years later. Each of the company's stores had credit managers who authorized the opening of store credit account, which resulted in many customers having credit accounts with more than one of the company's store. In addition, there existed no centralized control or record keeping of store credit accounts, which resulted in non-collectible accounts. This initiative to extend credit to all customers was made in 1969 during a prosperous period in United States history when Grant was expanding into new areas of the United States. Grants hoped to attract customers from other rival department stores. The low number of defaults on small loans at this time meant that the credit arrangements seemed a good idea, but the absence of any credit check and the low minimum repayment terms were extreme, even for the time. When the economic expansion slowed in 1970 and 71, the balance shifted and the credit arrangement became more of a liability than an asset. No decision was made to change or halt this before 1974, by which time the company's collapse was a certainty. In 1976, W.T Grants closed for good. Hey, if you just watched my video, thanks for watching. Hit that like button and please subscribe to Eric C. Productions.